as a Christian, I believe God gives everybody something to say, and we again stagnate ourselves by constantly re-electing the same people. They get real entrenched in the party. They get entrenched in their thinking, and their voting on certain bills or whatever. And I think it stagnates the ability to think beyond the current position. So would you agree that there needs to be kind of like, just how it is on the president, you can only serve so many terms? Should that be the norm, regardless of what position it is, that there's just a set amount of terms that you can run? Or does that create a problem in our Congress?
No, I think I agree with that. I think it should be maybe 2 terms. Let's say there were 4-year terms. I'm just kind of throwing out a number there. So if there were 2 4-year terms, I think that would be enough time for, if that person is elected and they're reelected by the majority, to kind of shape the country, the state, the county, the city, whatever, in the way that they want it to go. By instituting term limits everywhere, as the country changes, right, with new generations and our value system changing, then it can change with it. It will lag behind slightly, but not so slightly, or not at all, where it literally takes generations for it to change, right, for us to catch up. And so you think about rights for the LGBT community, right? And how many years that took to just get to that point, right? So I think that would be able to address that. At the same time, I think one limit would be not enough time. If you were going to change, people every 4 years, then I think that may be too chaotic for the country to decide what it is, who they are, right, as a country. And again, I kind of go back to, that's why I believe, all of the things need to be done simultaneously, right? So that way, if you do have, everyone can vote. If you get rid of the electoral college, if you get rid of a 2-party system, then you have the true majority elect the person that they want to be in office, and then the country goes in the way that the country, the majority, wants it to go in, right? And so then if it changes, then it actually changes based on a true majority, and not gerrymandering or voter suppression and all the other things that currently exist, or lifetime appointments where it doesn't matter how much you change, we're not going to change, because ultimately from the federal level, from on up, or even lower, it is what it is, and we're just kind of stuck with it for generations until people get in there and then are able to enact change.
So I feel like we've discussed some really radical positions as far as politics go. Is America ready for such changes, for these types of changes that we're discussing?
I don't know if America is ready, but America better get ready, because ready or not, here they come, right? I mean, you have, look at what you have, right? You have Antifa on the very far left, right? Extremists. You have, the folks on the very far right, right? And they're both feeling disenfranchised for a reason. You have folks that are in the middle, or middle left or middle right, that are feeling disenfranchised, right? There's regular folks that aren't on the fringes, but can't afford housing, can't afford food, working slave labor jobs, right? Not really living in part of the American dream. Walking around in a society where you don't know if you're gonna make it through the day, because of a traffic stop, whatever the case may be, right? And then now you have to the point where folks are storming the Capitol, and then driving a car into the Capitol and things of that nature. It's coming to a head, and people are tired of it, right? Literally, everyone is tired of it. And so you're going to have to do something to address it, to bring back democracy. I think at the end of the day, um, although there is a fear of the dominant society losing power, and so you'll kind of always have those things. I think at the end of the day, if things are done in more of a fair manner, and it is very transparent, it seems fair, people have the ability to get in the office, they don't have to buy their way in, and then stay in when they're there because they fix the rules and everything else, then folks will feel like they're actually invested in democracy, and things will go through fairly. So yeah, your person won, or this is what it is right now. But if that person is forced to be honest and talk about it, it's not a two-party system where they're forced to say, hey, well, I identify as a Democrat, so I have to, vote on this laundry list of things over here, or I'm a Republican, so I have to vote on this laundry list of things here, and then I can kind of weave in the middle, and that's okay, where a lot of us are. Then I think we would be better off as a nation.
So, one second. So, addressing that, America has all, well, Americans, I'll put it this way, Americans have always considered ourselves as, leaders of the world, global leaders. Are we reaching, or have we reached a point where it may be too late if we don't make these type of changes in, in short order, or may it be already too late?
I guess I would say the question is too late for who, right? Is it too late for Black America? I can give you the cynical answer for that. Is it too late for America in general? We talk about the debt that we owe to other countries. I was just watching something on the Hill earlier, talking about how much of our real estate is being bought up by foreign entities, right? We're talking about China, we're talking about Canada, and several others, right? And so now we're talking about single family homes. We're not even talking about commercial property here. So truly, we don't even own our own country. We're losing it a little bit at a time. And so, is it too late from an international standpoint? I don't know. I know that we're losing our standing. I know that we look like a S show to a lot of the rest of the world right now, and how chaotic it is. And for us to kind of stand sanctimoniously as the world police for so long, and then it's like he who is without sin cast the first stone. Clean up get the sty out of your own eye before you try to pick it out of mine. We've got a lot of work to do, and we have to restore ourselves on the world stage. And I don't mean to say to restore ourselves on the democratic world stage, but just as a true beacon of hope, and more of a paragon of doing the right thing internationally. And again, you can argue that there hasn't been a history of that from Vietnam and before, right? That we have been quite destructive worldwide, playing people against each other and whatnot. So is it too late? I don't know. I mean, it could just be more of the same. Status quo, doesn't matter what happens. Optimistically, I would like to think that if the things that we talked about could be instituted to, like I say, get dark money out, get rid of a two-party system, allowing all of our citizens to vote, things of that nature, to not have to, choose this or that, but to choose this and that, that we could change that. Yes, I do believe. Is that likely to happen? I don't know. Not the way that it's currently set.
So I asked that particular question because America's not the only superpower on the block, and it seems that you have other nations that are constantly challenging that line in the sand that America has drawn as far as superpowers go. And I'll take China for instance. they are reaching out globally to other nations and beginning to fill some of the roles that America once, kind of held privy over. And we see China becoming very active in Africa, on the African continent, and beginning to kind of reach out into the Middle East. They're starting to probe into the Middle East now. And so my question, was kind of based around that. The fact that America has so many problems internally, and we're kind of fighting amongst ourselves, so to speak. Um, is that going to damage, like you were saying, our standing, in the world, if we don't make some radical changes, in the short order of things? And that's kind of what I worry about a little bit. Like where are we going to be at in the next 5-10 years? I'm not talking 50-100 years, the next 5-10 years, like you say, with other nations coming in, buying up so much stuff. We're constantly printing money and finding ourselves further and further in debt with other nations and so forth. So I don't know if we have a system, an effective system in place that will allow for such radical change on such a in short order. Would you agree or disagree in that premise?
Well, let me give you an unnuanced, uneducated answer on that, right?
Okay.
Um, at the end of the day, we are still militarily the most powerful nation on the planet, right? And we are a bully. So, sure, are we losing a lot of footing in comparison to the rest of the world? Sure, but I mean, we haven't led in education in decades, and in other ways, but we still lead in military power, and so, you know, you have mutually assured destruction. On the one hand, you also have the other thing that we're not afraid to fight and we like to fight. And at the end of the day, again, my unintellectual answer would be, who is actually going to go ahead and take the lunch money back from the bully, right? So there's not too many people they'll stand up to the bully, but we're still so big that there's no one that can beat the bully. So if we decide not to pay our debts, or if we decide to print money or do whatever it is, I mean, it could cause global collapse. But I just I don't see that being like, we're not in some kind of imminent trouble here in the next 5-10 years where it's like, oh my gosh, man, we're now in a communist state under North Korean rule or Russian rule or something like that. And we're way too powerful for that.
How does social media play a role in democracy? And because we see on the news that social media is constantly becoming a very very
Propaganda?
prolific force. Yeah. I'm trying to be nice about it, but they're becoming a very prolific force in politics. Something that was originally created, kind of as a source of entertainment, so to speak. We started out with MySpace and making these little crazy pages, to now social media platforms are swaying and influencing political outcomes. Is that a problem? And what type of role do they play in the future? Do we need to reform that and limit that as being so again prolific in politics?
So, my answer would be this. One, mainstream media, social media, they have one thing in common: the word media, right?
Hmm.
And because of that, it's going to be propagandized to be used, against the people that the country that they're in, right? So the prevailing thought wins. And so no matter whatever it is that you think, even if it's, psychobabble or, conspiracy theory things, right? The whole thing we had where you're trying to, and YouTube is great for this, right? So there are literally certain words that you can't say on YouTube, otherwise it's going to be demonetized, right? So then you are saying that you're only going to promote certain words and certain thoughts and opinions that are going to go forth. And so that really is where our social media is. And so Black America has been had invented the word fake news long before Trump came along, right? Because the way that we were portrayed in the news, back then, decades ago, hundreds of years ago, in the newspapers, and as TV came along and radio and everything else, and still currently today, social media is just the extension of technology that does the exact same thing. And so, from a propagandist point of view, countries have used these mediums to steer and herd their people into the prevailing thoughts that they want them to believe, and try to do. I honestly believe, and maybe this is more of an anarchist kind of viewpoint on it. I think there should be a space for all those things to exist, right? See, the thing is that if you are a person that has hate in your heart, if you're racist, or if you're this or you're that and the other, I like my racism Southern fried, right? I like it in my face. You don't like me?
Yes,
Then great,
yes.
go ahead and let me know. But this northern racism that you see, that shake your hand, or get your job application and just kind of throw it in the garbage, or the move to say, well, we don't have America doesn't have a racist problem, it's got a class problem, and if you fix class, then you fix everything else, right? A high tide lifts all boats. All of those things are really dangerous, because none of those things actually fix or address the ills that exist. So, um, you know, for me, I think that the issue is if you try to stifle, um, you know, and there's arguments on what free speech is, right? You can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. But if people have their opinions, if you force those opinions into the dark, then you just make people, as an analogy or as a metaphor, take off the white sheets, and they've got their tie on, and they've got on their stethoscope, and they have on their judge robes and everything else. They still feel the same way, but it's hidden and you don't know it, right? And
Yes,
then they get
yes.
to hide behind that. Instead, hey, be out in front with it. That's how you feel. Be how you feel, and you're entitled to feel and think the way that you do, and I'm entitled to think and feel the way I do about how you think and you feel, right? But why should you have to hide that?
Yeah. So you kind of said something I want to touch on a little bit there. You're when you got to talking about YouTube, and trigger words, that they'll begin to they'll pull a video or demonetize you or do different things, based on things that are said. However, as you said, you just so eloquently said, black folks been knowing a long time that fake news is fake news. I was listening to a news segment this morning about somebody that, well, before I get into that, as far as these trigger words, we know that everything's not equal. The law is never equally applied. Pressure is never equally applied as far as this country goes. And so I want to play just a small little clip of a news segment that I heard, kind of based on what you said, and then get your response from that, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is from Democracy Now. The reporter is Amy Goodman. And of course, we're using this under the Copyright Act of 1987, I believe it
I,
is.
I think it's 1973 actually, but
Seven. Okay, thank you. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get this queued up and okay, here we go.
Facebook knew right-wing Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández.
Can you hear this?
Officials and former lawmakers to Taiwan 2 days after Taipei said China sent 25 warplanes into its air defense zone. China has been increasing military drills around Taiwan and warned the U.S. against intervening in the territory over which it claimed. Okay. Guardian reports Facebook knew right-wing Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández was using thousands of fake Facebook accounts to make his political campaign appear more popular and let him get away with it for nearly 1 year after the company was alerted to the activity. Facebook reportedly learned what was happening in 2018 with posts on Hernandez's page receiving engagement from tens of thousands of fake accounts. But Facebook took no action until the following year, even though it violated Facebook policy. Hernandez, a key U.S. ally, has long been accused of spreading misinformation online to discredit his critics and undermine social movements.
So there's a news segment, something that happened a couple years ago, nevertheless, of, of social media, allowing dishonest practices, for political purposes, and in this case, it's, again, able to swing, votes and swing people's opinions and, saying in a way, in a big way, determine the outcome of elections. What do we do about these type of issues? And what do you think about that reporting in itself? I guess I'll ask first.
Okay, so as far as the actual subject matter, I don't know enough about it to weigh in on what should be done about the particular issue with the military things or the political piece of that. Well, what I will say is my thought is if you are that's kind of the cost of doing business as far as Facebook and YouTube and some of these other, big entities are. You can get so big and become part of the country's culture that you actually transcend, right? To that end, I think if there are bots that are being used, those bots should be immediately taken down and dismantled, and it should be shown that these were bots that were created. Now, on the other hand, if there are a bunch of people that actually feel that way and they're posting that, then I think that is viable for it to be that way. So I'm going to ask you a question because you've been asking me a lot.
That's fine.
So the whole thing is democracy now. Does it need reform and this and that? We talk about voter suppression. We talk about what's happening in Georgia with trying to fix the vote and everything else. What we want is one person, one vote, right? And then whatever the majority is, then the majority, that's the way that it goes. Is that what democracy is?
I don't believe. Oh wow, I know I had kind of looked into this a little bit. I think that's the I won't say that that's what the democracy is. I'll say that's the concept of democracy.
In terms of voting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of voting, yes. I think that's what Americans like to believe that the definition of democracy is, that one vote, one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, and the greater of the two votes, wins out at the end of the day.
Right. So I'm just talking about the theory of democracy, not, hey, if democracy worked this way, and then, the other levels of, how things work, kind of, steer that to the left or the right. Just purely, if that's how you define democracy, then ultimately, if the country or the city or the state is a bunch of folks that think something that's pretty crazy, if they're the majority, then isn't that democracy for their thought to be what is the prevailing way of the land?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And unfortunately, that's throughout history, at least for the majority of history in this country, that's how it's been. We've had a lot of insane prevailing, you know, thoughts, I guess you'd say, that became law of the land. Because the majority of the people, felt one way or the next. Whether it was for the good of all or the good of some, or to the demise of all. Unfortunately, that's the way that this country has operated on some levels, on I would say on micro levels, on macro levels, on a larger scale. I don't think we've ever had true democracy, where the majority, wins out.
Right, but
Because
you're
of
kind of steering away from my point, though. I'm just saying, just the pure idea of a democratic election would be one person, one vote.
yes,
However people feel. There's no gerrymandering. There's no setting things up. Right,
yeah,
that person is elected based on the majority. Right, so then if that is the case, then if the majority of the land says, hey, you know what? Racism is, we're in a post-racist society, right? So
mhm.
you and I don't agree with that. But if that's what the majority of people think, isn't that then what democracy is?
Yeah, I concede to that. I concede to that. And again, whether it's for the good of all or the good of some or to the demise of all, I concede to that. Now,
So then that would I asked you that question because then that's why I'm trying to say that as support to why Facebook and YouTube should not sequester what people say, right? Get rid of the
yes,
bots because again, it's one person, one voice, right? You shouldn't
yes,
have 1,000 different accounts trying to steer it. But if the majority of people think in a certain way, then that's their right to think that way. Now we can have a conversation and try to educate and do different things to try to change how they think and provide information to them, which is what we've had to do in this country, through slavery, right? We had to do that. And black people didn't do that on their own. It took a whole bunch of white folks that said, you know what, this is wrong. We're going to have to do something else. And so, yeah, the country may move slower, but it actually may move more democratically because this is, and this is if we're saying we want a democratic state, right? It will move more democratically because it will be a fairer system under that guise. That's what I want to point out, and that's why for those that say, well, you can't have folks on here talking about all the different things that they say about the vaccine. Right. And yes, it is dangerous and it's not factual and it's not this, that, and the other. But again, you got all these people that believe that and they have a right to believe that, even if it's wrong, like you said, to the demise of the country. It's unfortunate that a lot of people feel that way. But again, America's created its own hell, right? So its own corruptness begets its own corruptness, right? It's birthing its own issues. So if you start to remove these things, then the misinformation, and the ideas and the thoughts of people, you'll see start to decrease, right? But as long as you keep these levers in place, you get what you get.
So and I agree with you. In that piece that I played, the issue that really caught my attention and that disturbed me again was kind of what you were saying, the bots. Facebook was aware of these bots and having certain policies that they are enforcing during this time. They're enforcing this policy of no bots, but they're being selective in that enforcement, and allowing, some to, get away with it. It then, leads to the question, where now you have to, kind of really, see if any of it is legitimate, like, let's say, Bernie Sanders is, running ads on Facebook and he's getting all this engagement, is Facebook allowing him to use bots? Is this now a legitimate movement? Because studies have shown that people are more likely to move with the herd than stand on their own. And so if people are going on Facebook and they're saying, okay, well, a lot of people are supporting this, so I'm going to get behind it, again, that uneducated electorate, that we have, population of electorate that we have, that is just kind of going with the flow. Now social media, the people that's running social media now, they're moving the winds of politics, is my concern.
Okay, so a couple things. Again, if the majority of your people in your country are low information voters, right? Then that's your country, that's your majority. So it needs to be steered in that way, good, bad, or ugly, right? To answer what they should do, I think they should across the board. It doesn't matter what the opinion is. If there are bots that are out there, those things should be destroyed. But ultimately, I think the freedom of I want to say the freedom, that's a trigger word. I just believe that if you're creating a space for people to espouse their ideas and their thoughts, whatever it is, it should just be there, laid bare for people to see and then make their judgment on there. And if you do that, I think that will help. As far as what you were saying about Bernie Sanders and saying he has an ad and this one has an ad, that's where it goes back to the dark money, right? Or just, an excess of money, right? We're shooting this video now and I can go into Facebook and I can pay however much I want, $100, $1,000, $5,000, and I can have this ad pumped to a target demographic, right? I can target 18 to 65-year-olds. I can target Bremerton. I could target just Port Orchard, Kitsap County, the state of Washington, the whole country. I could do whatever I want as long as I have enough money to do it.
Oh.
And so if you restrict those things, right? So then you see what I'm saying? So it's not a bot, it's money. You see what I'm saying? So you're still going to have it regardless of what it is. You know that there's bots. You're always going to have people that try to do bad things and usurp systems. So once those things come up, you chop it down, and you chop it down at the same vigor for each side, right? So it's as even as it can be. And then as far as money is concerned, you say, hey, look, this is what it's going to be. You want to put your ads on Facebook? Here's your position. We're going to put the people that counter your position, and we're going to play those ads at the same intervals, at the same, peak times that people watch ads. And then that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be even across the board. No one's going to be able to outbuy or outspend. And then the thought of the people is going to come forward, right? And then if it's the energy of your people, if your people are more energetic about the vote, right? We look at because a lot of let's say the BIPOC, a good portion of the BIPOC community would vote Democratic or more liberal, right? And so when we see voter suppression and some of the things that have happened, and we can talk about those things, but in a vacuum, right? When you have conservatives that are elected into office, right, and they are the majority, taking out, any kind of fixing or anything like that, right? Then that's fair. But then at the same time, when we have Obama that runs for office, and then a large portion of the BIPOC community and a big portion of the white community too come out and they want to vote for that, then it's the prevailing thought, right? Oh, it's the first Black president. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. So now, we're more invigorated to, retweet and repost and share and talk about what it means and what he's advocating for. Now, we're not as full-throated about it when it's Biden or Hillary or someone else. And I shouldn't say we. I actually don't like any of the three people that I just named on the record. But
on the record.
I told you I'm more conservative. I don't like Obama. I don't like Clinton. I don't like either of the Clintons, and I don't like Biden. Okay. But that said, and I should be able to say that, right, without reprising.
Oh yeah,
it's my opinion. It's my thought.
Most definitely.
But if that is the case, right, then that's what it is. If they're more strident and for their people and they're pushing out for that and they're changing hearts and minds, then that's what the hearts and minds say, And that is the majority. That is the democracy if we go forward in that way, right? Good, bad, or ugly. So, I think that's how we need to look at it, and that's how we can fix it. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And it does it very well. All right. So we're going to wrap up with just this one last issue. And it's kind of is really on what we were just talking about. And so with this, I just want to kind of get your opinion. So a news article.
How far are you just really trying to get me canceled, huh?
No. Hey, if you got something for me, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's all good.
Okay, so a recent news article says that 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices of opposing philosophies called for a return to civil discourse, warning that societal divisions and the spread of false information via social media poses a threat to American democracy. What do you think of that?
So, yes, misinformation does pose a threat to democracy. But again, Trump wasn't the first one to talk about fake news. So we've been dealing with that forever, right? And there, to me, it goes back to one, term limits are important. Two, you should have to be forced to answer a question directly, to not sidestep the question, to not blame someone else. I just don't think that you should be able to do that, right? And by doing that, I think even see, that's a tough one, because even if it's you could be telling the truth and really believe it, and it could be misinformation, right? Like I'm looking at the facts, but I don't agree with your facts, and this is my facts, and this is my opinion based on those facts. But that would be you would have to share that thought, right? It couldn't be you scapegoating or having red herrings or proxy arguments or anything else. I think that should automatically disqualify you. You're done. Next one up. You need to answer the question outright. So I think that one is a hard one. That's a hard one.
Yes.
That's
well. With that being said, did you have anything for me?
Yeah, I do have a question for you. So you're asking me these questions and getting my perspective on it. And I know that you'll talk about it a little bit on when you kind of talk about it yourself from more of a Christian aspect of it. But could you give us a little preview? I know you kind of believe more in the separation of church and state, but can you give us a more of a nuanced answer based on a clergy's point of view on this?
So I'll put it this way. Let me see if I can find it in my Bible real quick.
While you're doing that, you are watching the Conduit with Marwan Cameron. This is the 2x2 study series. This is episode 2. Episode 1 you can find on Facebook. All you have to do is type in 2x2 studies and you will go to their Facebook page. And what we will be doing every week is bringing you a conversation where Reverend Ellington asks me questions about current topics and issues, and we're going to have a discussion. And I come from a more, I'd say maybe more spiritual side and less religious side, although, I was raised by a Baptist minister. I was raised in the church. I don't currently have a church home. There's a number of reasons for that, and a lot of that has to do with feeling kind of ostracized by the church, and in particular the Black church, and not feeling like I belong at a Black church, and Black men, heterosexual Black men in particular, have been driven away, and that'll be a conversation that we have later. And then having the converse, or the flip side of that, as a heterosexual male, married Black male, clergy in the church having these discussions and conversations. And the hope and the purpose of that ultimately for me, and I'll let Reverend Ellington speak for himself on this, is what exists, right? But we know that we are in a state in our world where we have a myriad of issues that we need to address. We are not in a position where we can wait to work on these issues one by one. As I was saying before, we have to attack these issues on a multifaceted level. A big one for me is there are a lot of Black males that are out here that are alone. If you look at incarceration rates, homelessness, health issues, mental health, resources that are available, feminism, the destruction of the patriarchy, just a lot of different things, anti-Black misandry. There's a whole lot of things that are packed up in there that have us kind of feeling like we're out here on an island alone. Police brutality, government sanctioned murder in a lot of ways through our court systems and everything else. And whether we're Christian or not, whether we're Muslim or whether we're atheist or agnostic or whatever the case may be, we're all Black men. Beyond that, we're all people. And so we have to find those commonalities to figure out how to work together for the betterment of ourselves, and for our families, as Black men, as our community, and then as the country, as it gets larger, as we look at it from a macro level. So that is my purpose of doing the 2x2 studies with Reverend Ellington, and it's really my purpose of the Conduit in the first place, right? Is to create a space to establish dialogue, and the hope is that we all don't feel the same, but it's a place where we can respect each other and then have our conversations. I know for many of you, you probably have never even heard the term anti-Black misandry, and you have no idea what it means. But these things have to be talked about and discussed. And if it is, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody gets to have their space, right? Everyone gets to live their truth, quote unquote, then the Black man, the heterosexual Black man, needs to have that space also, right? And we are in a cancel culture. And so, the thing is, I talk about it a lot. People like to sing, so you can shame, you can insult, you have a need to be right, and you can guilt. I don't give a shit. Sorry, I know I don't cuss a lot, but it is what it is. So good luck with that. I'm going to still be me and do what I got to do, but I do want to try to make a change in the world. And trying to cancel someone, for how they think and not how they act, I think is a tough one. Anyway, back to you, Rev. Are you ready?
Yeah, ask me your question one more time.
All right. So first, because I was just telling the audience about why I do this. Will you just jump in and tell the folks why you wanted to partner together with the Conduit and 2x2 studies? What your outcome is for this?
Well, one, just to be frank and honest, I just really enjoyed talking with you. I enjoy a intelligent conversation. I believe in what the Bible says, iron sharpens iron, and I mean that on multiple levels, not just on a spiritual level, but on an intellectual level, so I always enjoy just having intellectual conversations with folks. I want to broaden people's horizon and thinking opinions about the church, about faith. And I believe that right now in America, and I won't say this is true for everybody, but right now in America, there's a bad stigma. There's a bad taste in America's mouth when it comes to faith, religion, spiritual, matters, however you want to define it. And I want to redefine that narrative. I feel like the right-winged evangelicals have dominated the airwaves and dominated the church's voice. And as with any community, there's always multiple voices, there's always multiple varying opinions, all the way down into your own household. Nobody, even though you all live together in unity, everybody is going to have their own way of thinking about things. And I believe, I've always taught my children at home, I've always taught them, hey, you have a voice, it's valid. I want to hear it. I want to hear what you have to say, even if it's a differing opinion than what I may have. Speak, up. And that's one of the reasons. Another reason is, again, people feel, I feel like, society thinks that, there's this, what's the word? Stereotypical image of Christianity. And I want to debunk that myth that, you have to be this certain, way, to be a Christian. And I want people to know that we come in all shapes, size, forms, thoughts, whatever else, and that, God accepts us, where we're at. So I'm just really trying to break down a lot of misnomers that, society has about, Christianity. And I think partnering with you, bringing that secular voice and, speaking, to things, the way that you do, allows me an opportunity to interject, from a Christian viewpoint, but also at the same time show people that we're not really far apart, in our thinking on many things, even though I found out something new. You're conservative and I'm progressive, but like, I consider you a good friend and a good person. And, it's like, it at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, and I think our goals are both directed in the same way, and so, I really,
well, let me kind of clear that up. When I say I'm conservative, that doesn't mean I'm Republican, because I'm not Democratic, right?
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
Okay,
I understand the difference.
Well, it's kind of the way you said it. I was like, well, I just found out you were conservative, and you know what? That's okay, brother. I love you anyway.
No. I understand. The conservative ideology, and I know that, unfortunately, again, back to the party system, I know that you have, conservative Democrats, moderate Democrats, liberal Democrats, progressive Democrats, so forth, or whatever, the same way you do on the Republican side. And that's what one of my arguments for dismantling, the party, system, and people just simply arguing their case for being elected. But with that being said, I pray for what we're beginning here to really grow and flourish, and we begin to move people's frame of thoughts, and that it may open their way of thinking up to new possibilities.
Absolutely. I love it. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity, because
me as well.
I grew up in the church. So, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. But I'm not connected to a church, right? So I'm spiritual. I would say that I'm religious, but I'm not, reading my Bible every day. I'm not going to Bible study. I'm not going to church. I have some different viewpoints on that. But again, at the end of the day, we've got to find a way to work together, regardless of where you're at, right? At the yes. end, we're humans, we're people. We've got to treat each other well and look out for each other. So yeah, thank you for that. So, but you found your Bible verse. Go ahead.
Yeah, before you move on, I find that I don't know if ironic would be the right word, but you grew up in the church and I didn't. And the roles we are playing right now, it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, just makes me think. But go ahead.
Well, so while that's ironic, at the end point, if you believe in God, then we're both where we're supposed to be right now.
Amen. And I do
will,
believe,
right?
and I do believe that as well. Okay, but your next question, go ahead.
I don't even remember what the question was now. Oh, okay. So you've been asking me questions, right? The format is I interview people on the Conduit. This is an opportunity for, someone to ask me questions and give my opinion, and then you to play off of that. So what I wanted you to do was to just give us, your thoughts from a religious perspective on the need for democratic reform. Can you give it, and I know you're going to touch on it in your own show that you do by yourself, but can you just kind of give us a little preview of that?
Yeah, so all right, Romans chapter 13 verse 1, and this is the New King James Version. It says, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. So as far as democracy goes, the need for reform, and just giving my commentary on it from a spiritual viewpoint and what the Bible teaches us. Clearly, as I just said, the Bible teaches us to, obey, be subject to the government and authorities. In other words, whatever the laws of the land are, then, that's kind of what you play by, unless it, contradicts with God's law, which ultimately, as Christians, that is the supreme authority. Now, as far as a need for reform, and I think this may be another topic for another show that we may do. I personally would not mind just pretty much scrapping democracy completely and going to a monarchy system where we have a ruling king or queen or whatever that may be. Now, I know a lot of people may be shocked by, and that's my personal opinion. Okay.
Boy, y'all thought I was radical. Oh boy. Pray tell, I'm all ears.
So when I say that, and that's why I say this will definitely have to probably be another show, because it's a deeper conversation. There are different thoughts systems as far as monarchies go. We have a European idea of a kingdom, and we have an African concept of a kingdom. And so when I say a monarchy system, I'm thinking of an African type of monarchy system. And those, who may be tuning in that, know a bit about those type of systems, they'll know that it's radically different from what most people would think of when they think of, kings and queens and their word being absolute. That's a European version of a monarchy. And so that's kind of where I am with it. And I say that because ultimately, we'll all one day live under in a kingdom where we have a king, and of course he's completely just and sovereign, and so what he says goes, because what he says is always good, and so I'm okay with that. And so that's kind of where I would approach it from, where it's like, yeah, we just need to kind of do away with all of that, because it's, I think, they constantly say that, talk about America and, the great experiment or whatever, that this is, ongoing experiment. And I would dare say that the experiment has failed. It's been long failed. And it's time to, wrap it up. We have enough numbers and statistics to show that this, experiment is a failure in my eyes.
All right. I think that's definitely a fascinating take. I almost didn't want you to say any more. You want to leave them on the hook so they tune in for another show, because I haven't heard this perspective
I'll cut that part out on my end.
No, I'm actually, and like you said, it's ideas and thoughts. You shouldn't, stifle anyone's thoughts and ideas, right? And oftentimes, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Now, I mean, there are going to be things where, right is right and wrong is wrong. But, if you just stifle voices and thoughts, I mean, that to me, that's part of what the definition of diversity is, right? The definition of thought and opinion, right? So, we're saying, hey, well, we value this thought, but we don't value that one. So everyone should be heard. And unfortunately, if everyone in the land feels a certain way and it's counter to you, that's how they feel, right? And you've got to go and work toward changing that. But it is what it is. But all right, well, you got any? Give you the last word, Rev?
Well, as always, the last word for me is: may God bless you, may God keep you, and may you always, always, always be encouraged in our Lord and our Savior, Jesus the Christ.
All right.
Amen.
Well, I appreciate you tremendously. I love our conversations.
Yes, sir.
Quiet as kept. We were having a discussion about topics the other day and ended up recording a whole session impromptu, which will come out in the future and we'll probably add to it. But
sir,
it's good to talk to people. Try to have conversations with folks that don't think the way that you think. Get to know people. People are humans, and we can identify and we can grow from that. I just encourage you to do that. But I am Marwan. This is the Conduit. This is our 2x2 studies and the Conduit series. We will be coming to you once a week. Again, I will post episode 1 here soon. But that's how it will be. If there's any topics that you want us to discuss, go ahead and send them in, and we'll put them on the docket. I can see us going where we might have to do more than one show a week, Rev, because it's just that much.
I'm already preparing for that. Believe it or not, I am.
All right. Well, I'm Marwan Cameron. I may come back to you later on tonight. In the meantime, if you need to get a hold of us, 360-373-3000. Today is Wednesday, so if you are looking for a hot meal, we do now deliver. That will start next week. If you need a meal for next Thursday, let us know. But we've been doing delivery for about 3 months now, so that is going well. Shout out to Bremerton Food Line and all the pallets of food that we got from you today. Do know we are working on our after school program, finalizing that. So we should be providing 100 meals to children who are food insecure in our area on a daily basis, 2 meals per day. And then also we have a number of construction and maintenance jobs available and driving jobs. So we do have pay for that. I think we had settled around, well, give us a call. We'll talk about that. But right now we have roofing work. We have pressure washing, painting, apartment turnover. We do need drivers. We've got a lot going on. So I will talk to you soon. And until next time, I'm Marwan Cameron. This is the Conduit.